Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Now, here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Craig and Greg Show. I'm Craig. This is Greg. We are glad to be back with you. You know, I think there's a stereotype sometimes when somebody has the title leader that nothing ever affects them. They are hard charging. They're never going to slow down for anything. They never get afraid of anything. And I think that that's not true. I think leaders do get afraid. They do have to battle fear, but I think that leaders have learned to frame fear differently so that it's not something that's paralyzing them, but something that they are moving through. So let's talk a little bit about this, because I think it'll set some leaders free, because there's some that probably have been afraid to admit that they were afraid, because then they say, well, if I say I'm afraid, what's that going to do for the rest of my team? I better not admit it. But I think that there's some value in being able to admit that you're struggling with fear.
Neither you nor I are like TV connoisseurs. We're not going to watch shows and waste our days. But I remember one show, maybe I saw a couple episodes, Fear Factor.
Oh, yeah.
What would be yours?
Favorite show or favorite fear?
Fear.
Oh, fear?
Not favorite. What would be your big fear? Like,
I don't know. Probably spiders are not my favorite. I mean, I can tolerate them, but
well, outside.
Yes.
Not in the house.
Right.
Spiders, huh?
Yeah.
I think claustrophobia.
Yeah.
I can attest from my one MRI experience. I'm like, this canister is not for me.
Right. Get me out of here.
Get
right?
me out of here.
Yeah.
But many have fears. For leaders, sometimes the fears aren't a phobia.
Correct.
You know, it's the pressures of, expectations of, maybe even esteem issues of, can I even win this battle? I mean, I'm fighting our board, I'm fighting a competitor, I'm fighting a union or whatever. Fear, what comes to mind, Craig, with you in all of your wonderful experiences in leadership and serving, that fear you've seen really maybe detrimental to that leader?
Yep. I think what I mentioned at the opening, the biggest thing that I think I've seen, and I probably have struggled with myself facing fear, is the paralysis that comes with that. So for me, like when all of the stuff is like ramping up, my first response is not going charge and going right at it. My first response is like, I'm going to take a nap. You know, it's almost like this retreat kind of thing. Like maybe if I go and close my eyes for a little bit, when I get up, it'll be gone. You know, almost like that little kid, you know, that's doing like this. I don't want to see. If I'm not seeing it, then it's not really there. Right. And I think that that's been the big thing that I had to overcome. But I still see it in a lot of leaders, is just like, what do you know, and it's just that paralysis of like, I'm not sure what to do.
I'm sure there is much study of our brain and the effect of fear and what it does to us.
Yep.
I can tell you, I've been around people, but you have probably too, maybe some of the same, where they've lived a very chaotic, fear-filled life, and it shows.
Yes. Yep.
And if it shows on the outside, I think what we really need to protect is our heart and our mind from fear. Any suggestions?
Yeah. Well, you know, I remember several years ago reading a study. I think it was the University of Michigan that did it. That said when you
not this one.
No, when you like break down what people are most afraid of, that they kind of went through it and said, you know, a lot of those are already in the past, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And then, you know, as they kind of went through the whole thing, it's really about 4% or so of the fears are the ones that are, you know, really things that we have to deal with. And so I think that that's the first thing, is that framing. Again, I wish I could give credit to somebody for this, but years ago I found this acrostic for fear that has helped me. That's false evidence appearing real. And I think that that's been the big thing, is to say, well, wait a minute, if this is making me afraid, I need to, let me look at the evidence. Which of the evidence is true? Which of it is false, that I can evaluate?
So that acrostic, as a leader, let's speak to just the leader, not leading others who might have it. Right. But you, as a leader, are really kind of making up maybe some anxiety over something that's really not real or going to happen, not likely, not probable.
Sure.
What is it in our past that makes us go there? And what do we put in place going forward that maybe can restrict that or eliminate it?
Yeah. I think past experiences are definitely, because you start to say something like, this looks just like, this sounds just like, and you go back to something that you did before, which is, it's how we learn, because you think about like at the start of every school year, your teacher always went, okay, so last year you learned this and now we're going to build on it. So we do have to learn, but I think that that's the thing, is to say, okay, but I'm a different person than I was then. Even if it took place a week ago, I'm a different person than I was a week ago. Hopefully I've learned at least something. If nothing else, I've learned to recognize what it is I'm getting ready to face. Yeah. If nothing else, I've learned maybe the wrong way to handle it. And so I'm going to be able to choose something different this time. But I think that that's the big thing, is that it is the past, what took place before, but then you're almost like saying, but I'm, and it's going to have the exact same outcome this time. And it doesn't have to. And you're then, robbing yourself of that future because you're still stuck back there.
Have you ever been around a leader who used fear?
Oh, you mean to try to motivate people? Like, yeah.
Or control. Or
yeah. If you don't do this, you're fired kind of thing. Or, I've been around a couple of leaders. I remember kind of coaching one guy. He didn't ask for it, but we were good enough friends that I just said to him, because I was in his office and a couple of his employees came in, and even though he didn't say or else at the end, that was the feeling. Like, and so I said to him, I go, your folks that are coming in here and asking you these questions, when you're telling them what you'd like them to do, there's really this undertone of or else there. And, when we become fearful, we become tunnel visioned. We stop thinking about options. We just kind of go, and we're focused on that problem, and we're not thinking creatively anymore. And so that's what I said to him. I think you're robbing these people of some creativity, because you've really said to them, do it my way or else.
Right.
And they're not thinking about any other possibilities.
As a leader, we've both been in these wonderful roles, sometimes hard and sometimes very rewarding.
Very hard.
But
yes.
I think the challenge for us leaders is, if we don't know our people, we're not going to know if they have some fear factor happening.
Right.
How do we create a culture as a leader so that we can actually say, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm going to be transparent here, but I also want you to know it's okay to be transparent. So there's not a fear of many of the things, right? Being disliked, being misunderstood, being fired, whatever.
But
how do we do that for ourselves? Because if we're the leader, no one's really doing that unless we hire a coach.
Sure.
Right? Or have maybe a team that's not yes people.
Right.
How do we do it?
Well, and I think, again, a lot of times when somebody is the point leader, and I've seen a lot of people in this, and I probably have been guilty of this before too, of thinking that if I ask somebody else for help, that they're going to now think less of me. Like, why are you the leader if you're asking me for help? And especially if you have a corporate flow chart, and here I am, and I'm going to ask somebody for help that's like 2 steps below me, and then you're thinking, well, then they're going to think, well, why should I follow him if
They
if
should
he
have my
doesn't?
job.
Yeah, we should swap boxes on that flow chart.
Right.
But I think that you need to think of it the other way around. If I'm going to this person, it's because I think that they're the best person to help me, and that's really going to elevate them. And if I elevate them, I elevate myself and the whole organization too. But so maybe it's a little bit of I think what keeps us stuck in our fear sometimes is our pride, of getting injured.
Yeah, you're very true. How about others as we lead, which is a cool definition. So lead what? Lead them into more confidence. Mm-hmm. I don't like this quote or the saying, but I've been around some other people who used it. Well, I don't want to say too many nice things. I want you to get a big head.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm really unsure that I'm wanted here. Yeah. I'm really unsure if I'm going to be celebrated here. I'm really unsure if you like me or understand me. How do we do that to the outside? So it's our battle as a leader, but we also have to make sure if we're winning with fear, over fear, but they're not.
Right. Well, we've talked before about the self-talk. I think it's very important, the way that we speak to ourselves. We had, I think our previous episode was on the words that we speak to other people on our team, but I think it's equally as important, the words that we speak to ourselves, especially in those moments of fear. One of the things for me that has been immensely helpful is to go to the Psalms. One of the things that I like in the book of the Psalms in the Bible is the raw emotion that is there on these people. They're writing out. Sometimes you'll have up at the top, it'll say, this psalm was written while this was happening. So it might be where this guy was completely surrounded by his enemies. Was he afraid? Yeah, probably. Because then when I read farther down, he even says that. He says something like, God, my enemies are surrounding me and I am afraid.
Right.
I'm fearful. But then what usually happens is they say something like, wait a minute, I'm looking in the wrong spot. I'm trying to figure out how I can get out of this by myself. And there's no thought of like investing in somebody else, or certainly even asking God for his help. And I think that that's part of where our conversation needs to be with ourselves, is like, well, wait a minute. Am I totally depending on myself here? Mm-hmm. It's my personal history. It's my resources. It's my wits. That's the only thing.
Like it.
I wait a minute. Maybe I need to involve somebody else here.
I like that. Segue into that, involve others. Really critical for us leaders to have those others, right? So we can say, not really super confident here. Can I run this by you? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And then, oh, that's perfect. The only thing I would tweak is this.
Right.
Oh, and now the person's getting some confidence over fear. Pride. It's one of the main reasons we mess up.
Yep.
As humans, not just leaders. How do we as leaders show others that fear can be defeated, right? It may not even be real.
Right.
But what you really have to do is get rid of a little core of your self-pride.
Right.
How do we do that? Because that's really tough.
Well, I think the transparency part is huge, because you also create the accountability in there. Yeah. And you're almost giving people an opportunity to see an autobiography like as it's being written. I mean, it's great when we go back and read somebody's autobiography later on, and you read the story and they're like, here's all of the odds that were stacked against me. But then I did this, and I called in these people, and I did this, and here's how and you're like, oh, that's great. But when you do it with your teammate around you, when you're saying to people things like, I don't know how this thing's going to land.
Right.
I'm not sure if this is going to come across the right way, but here's the strategy. And I guess worst case scenario, this could happen. But does that even sound likely, the worst case scenario? I mean, would that ever really happen? Right. So it can't turn out that bad. You know, when you're saying that out loud to people around you and say, now here's our strategy, let's move forward. And they're actually getting to see it as the autobiography is being written. And it's not only benefiting me, it's benefiting them at the same time.
It almost plays into the people learn different ways. Mm-hmm. That would be an observation.
Yep.
My leader, my boss, my amazing person, she's not always confident.
Right.
Well, that makes me feel human too.
Yes. Yeah.
That kind of thing. So leaders face a lot of fears. Let's kind of do this big cloud. What are some that can just paralyze us like nobody's business?
Well, I think one that paralyzes is this, psychologists lately have called it FOMO, the fear of missing out. Yep. Like, I need to keep up with everything. Well, that can actually paralyze you because you can't focus on any one thing. Mm-hmm. So you're like, all right, I got to check this email. I got to pull out my phone and check this, app to see if there was anything. I got to check these reports over here. I got to check in on this department over here. I got to. And well, then what you're really saying is that if I don't check all of those things, this isn't going to fly.
Yeah.
It goes back to that pride issue.
Right.
Well, why do you think that if you miss something, do you think the whole thing's going to fall apart because you missed that one, thing over here, and you're not trusting the rest of your team to say, hey, I got your back on that one. I'll take care of this part over here. So that's a big one that I think a lot of people struggle with.
So FOMO really is a distraction to stay in your sweet spot,
right?
Really. So it's the fear of missing out, but
right.
then you did miss out,
right?
Which is quite funny. I mean, sorry to make a joke out of it, but
right.
I think for people I've been coaching or have been mentoring for a long time, I've just seen this come across like, well, I don't want to cause trouble. My fear is of being disliked.
Yes. Yep.
Well, that's part of us leadership, right? We're sometimes alone in this, or sometimes we've got a small group. It's not like the whole group is loving us, or in our office, or in this memo. I wonder about disliked. Like, okay, so I'm leading to be liked. How what a trap that is.
It is a trap, and I think for me, the way I've tried to address it is right up front, where I've said something like to my leadership team, the people around me, say, listen, I want us to make decisions together, but understand that there might be a time where all of you say, we're going to go with option B, and I'm going to say, no, we need to go with option A, even though I'm outvoted, because maybe, and tell them right up front, because the bottom line is I'm the one who's accountable here. I got to answer to a board of directors, or I got to answer to God, or whatever. But, I want us to be able to make decisions together. But if the heat's on, if, I think I have a better perspective on something, I might be able to have to make the decision. I told my church board that, and I said, I would hope that in however many years that God gives me here as your pastor, that the number of times that I have to say, we're going to do it this way, and if you ask me why, that I'm just going to say, because I'm the pastor and I say so, that we could count that on one hand and have fingers left over. So far, coming up on 14 years there, I haven't had to say it once.
Yeah.
But I think still having that conversation up front, like saying, I want to try to involve you. I want you to be here with me. But there might be that time that I have to. But that's the opposite of just saying, I'm not going to ask you for your input. I'm just going to do it myself. Or I'm going to ask you for your input just because I have to kind of make you feel like you're a part of it. But I'm still going to do what I want to do.
Yeah. So. I've had this one. I've also seen so many people have this fear of conflict.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I like a natural tension, when there's drama infused, it's like, oh my goodness, here we go. It's like, leave that outside. We're
right.
I think the conflict one, if we want to kind of dive into that one, where people are like, yeah, you did this, the ostrich, doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. It's but you're just pretending it doesn't exist.
Right.
What about that conflict and how that fear can paralyze, and how can we free others to say conflict's okay? When we leave this room, we still need to be friends.
Absolutely.
We need to be associates.
Yep. And I think that's the thing. I have really appreciated the times when I've been able to pick some of the people that I want to work with. And you pick friends.
Right.
And again, I have that conversation right up front. Hey, we're going to be in the trenches together. We might have some friction. You might see something one way and I see it another way. There might be times where we're just not connecting. That's okay. I still want us to stay friends. We're still, regardless of what happens here, we're going to remain friends in this thing. And I think, again, as much as you can up front, or even real time, I've done where we've been in a meeting and the stakes are kind of high, and so people are really like saying, well, I think we need to do it this way, and somebody else is like, no, I see it this way, that I'll even call a timeout. I'll go, you know what, hold on. I said, we're seeing opposite sides of this. That's okay. We need to see all of the sides on this. So please don't hold back. Share the way that you see it, because we got to have a full picture here. Yeah. What I don't want is somebody after the fact going, oh, I knew that wasn't going to not work. But why didn't you share that information? Well, because I knew it'd be controversial.
Fear of being wrong.
Yes, or fear of not being liked, or
criticized.
Yeah. And so I think that, as early on in the process as a leader can say, this will probably happen. We will probably, So let's just know right up front what
That's good advice.
It's almost like, if going back to, I know we use a lot of sports analogies at times, but that's part of what the coach does with the game planning ahead of time, is saying, if the other team does this, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
So you're prepared for it. So then when you step up to the line of scrimmage or whatever, and you look and you go, oh, they're doing it, I know what we're supposed to do now. You don't want to look and go, they're doing this. What are we supposed to do right now? That's not what you want on a football field. It's not what you want in your office, in your boardroom, in your church. You want people to, when they step up to something, you go, oh, this looks scary. Oh, wait a minute. We already talked about this.
We've been here before.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. That's another piece, maybe as leaders, we need to allow people to have those opportunities to battle their fear.
Yes.
Because that is also a reminder, and it's refulfilling to them. Like, I used to be afraid to do that, but I've done this so many times. My fearless leaders.
Yeah.
Funny, pun intended. My fearless leaders put me in this spot.
Yep.
And I know I can do this because he or she believes it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. And I think that, again, that's where a leader needs to come alongside and say, hey, listen, you're not going to lose your job here.
Right.
But I do need you to make a decision. You do need to, I'm right here with
Decide.
You. Right. Yeah. I'm backing you on this, and let's, what.
One funny story, and then I'll get to a cool quote they'll share, and then you can wrap it up. But I do think what do you think? We'll just go with it. What do you think, it'll be okay? So the confidence that is like, okay, so do you want me just to do it? Because I'm already in the trenches with you. I've got a shovel with gloves on. I mean, let's just dig. But I think sometimes they have to, you got this, I'll be back in 5 minutes. I hope I do. I do. And then they do.
Right.
And the next time you say, hey, you got this one.
Yeah, I do.
I've done this one.
Yep.
I think that's important for successes.
Yes.
To get over the fear.
Well, how are you going to know that you, what's on the other side of the fear? You're never going to know. If you stay paralyzed, you're never going to know what the outcome could be.
Yeah.
So be afraid, but do it anyhow.
I was around a number of people in my career that said, just try. And I thought, try, and then you're going to do what?
Yeah.
You're going to write me up?
Yeah.
Critique me? Look over my shoulder and I'm doing it wrong?
Right.
And many of them didn't. And that's very intentional. Just try.
Yeah.
Come back and tell me what happened. Oh, that was a bad thing. Well, good. Now we know one way it didn't work.
Right.
Versus, yep, I'm just going to wait till the instruction comes or the manual comes, and then I'll try it verbatim. And if it doesn't, then I'll just point to the book.
Right. And I can blame somebody else.
Right. You want to do the Henry Ford quote?
No, you found that one. That's a really good quote.
I just like it. Henry Ford really was such a pioneer in a lot of ways. I don't drive a Ford, but I do think he was an amazing leader, and particularly that time.
Yes.
One of the greatest discoveries a man makes is to find out he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do. Mm-hmm. You could switch it to her, doesn't matter. But a leader had to find out, I didn't think I could do it, but I can.
Right.
And that bolsters so much for us with our fellow leaders and our teammates. I think that's our job, is to bolster the confidence. Say, I'm going to face this fear with you, and then the next time I see it, I don't need you here.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Yep. So. Well, and listen, I would err on the side of just do something that works better than just sitting there. The analogy that I've used before is you can't steer a parked car.
Right.
So let's just put it in gear, and if it is going down the wrong road, at least now we know the wrong road, and let's figure out how to get back on the right road.
God does allow U-turns too.
Yes.
I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Standing example.
If you're just sitting there going, I'm not doing anything because I'm afraid I'll make the wrong decision, there's nothing to coach there. There's you gotta. I remember in my Little League, we had a dad that was an assistant coach with us, and he had played at the college level, and so I remember one day he was kind of helping us in our batting, and I was standing at the plate, and I took like 2 pitches. I thought that they were kind of outside, and so I just kind of let them go. And I remember him stepping up to me and going, "If you don't swing, you haven't given me anything to coach."
That's brilliant.
I need to see you swing, and then I can say, good
or bad, doing the right thing.
Right. Change your weight here, move your hands this way. And I've always, I must have been, 12, 13 years old when he said that. And it's always, there's been times where I feel like I don't know what I'm going to do here. And I can hear his voice say, just take a swing, because then you know what to tweak, perfect. You know what to coach. So coaching is great help, and that's what we're here to do as well. If you go to maximizeleadership.com, check out our page on coaching, fill out the form on there, say, here's what I'm struggling with, here's what I'm afraid might happen, I don't know how to get over this, and let us read that and get back to you on how we can help coach you. We'd love to be able to do that. We also would like to get some input from you on future podcasts and topics you'd like us to cover. So either leave a comment below, or on Twitter, you can reach out to us at Maximize Podcasts and just say, hey, why don't you guys talk about this topic? We'd love to put that in the rotation. We're here to resource you, to coach you, so that you can get over fears, you can get over hurdles that might be in your way, and you can really soar, because when you get better, you're going to make the rest of your team better as well. Amen. It's going to be a win-win all the way around. That's what we're here for. Stay tuned. We got lots more great content coming up for you.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of The Craig and Greg Show.